Thank you so much for your warm welcome this morning. I truly appreciate it. It feels like home, and I was sharing with Gary some memories of when I was young, born in Montreal, Montreal North. My parents are from Beauce, so very close to the Maine border, and I used to come here all the time. And Gary was reminding me that if there's one place everybody knows about in Quebec, it's Plattsburgh. Either for shopping or coming to see friends or going to the beach. We've always been very close, and so it brings back childhood memories for me to be here this morning. So thank you again for the invitation to all the members of the North Country Chamber, to Gary. I want to say hello to elected representatives that are here today, the mayor of Plattsburgh, but also all Quebecers in the room today working here, and those Americans who have worked either for a Quebec company or have spent some time in Quebec and Montreal. You are right when you say this is one of the only places we get those close neighbors with whom we share so much in work, but also family and friendship. And I was very much looking forward to coming here. In fact, when I came in, and I'm absolutely not following what I was supposed to say, but this is what happens amongst family and friends. When I came in my post, one of the first phone calls, even before the phone call of Gary, Peter and Annie came to me and said, "Oh, you have to absolutely plan on going to see Gary Douglas." I was at the winter meeting of the National Governors Association last month, I think. Things go really fast at the Quebec office. And I can say, whether, Republican or Democrat, every governor and every meeting I attended, the takeaway was we are so intertwined, and we are a regional power. And I include in that my friends in Ontario, the Great Lakes, and this whole region. And whatever happens in terms of changes on trade, we remain together, and we want to thrive together, and that's very important. So this is, I guess, my little introduction on how glad I am to be here this morning and focus on this particular region, amongst many other priorities that the Premier has put on my shoulder. So it's a privilege to be here, and I want to talk a little bit about the new government. I know new governments mean new faces, and that won't change the fact that this is an important region, and the economy in Montreal, Quebec, and North Country and New York is really very much linked. But let me say a few words about Premier Legault, because I happen to come directly from his office before I took this posting. So he's asked me to lead the transition before the vote. The vote was October 1st in Quebec, and Premier Legault was elected on that day. And then I stayed on, trying to implement that government with only, I would say, 2 politicians as part of that government, him and some others that were in opposition with him. And so most of his government is composed of businessmen and businesswomen. And that makes a true difference, because they come with another approach, and I think they come for the right reasons, and they're not necessarily career politicians, which can really serve the purpose of being a government, because you need to know how government works. But they come with something else, and one of the things that quickly was understood by me as I came to know Premier Legault is that where he came from. So he built Air Transat, that is now one of the most flourishing companies, a vacation airline in the country. And when he came to politics and decided to form the party, it was exactly to make sure that there's better paying jobs in Quebec, that industry thrive, that there's no gap with our neighbors, because there's no reason to have any gaps with our neighbors. And that we ensure prosperity for this generation, but the generations to come after us. And so his true priority is really creating jobs, increasing exports to the world, and attracting more investments in Quebec. And he's a guy of numbers, and I can confirm that to you. I think we were in France and Davos together for an economic mission. I think we met 35 CEOs in 4 days in France, and then in Davos with Minister Fitzgibbon as well, Minister of the Economy, who I'm sure will come through the region very soon. And every time we would come out of a meeting, we would come to a conclusion. We have a free trade deal with France, but we only have about $1.3 billion US of trade with France. That's not a lot compared to what we have here in the region or New York State, which tops, I think, let me take my numbers. I know them by heart, but not in US dollars, and they told me I had to say US dollars.
We're bilingual, we can convert.
Yeah. So 8.1 billion between New York State and the province of Quebec. And I was saying that this is more than France, Germany, and UK combined in terms of trade with Quebec. So that's how important this region is. And you know, out of the 71.2 US billion dollars that we trade as a province with the world, 49.2 billion is traded here with the United States. So that's how important the country is for us. And so so the government is committed to following up on that. And you know, of course, we've looked at the numbers from a delegation standpoint. I think we can bring those exports up 20% in the next 4 or 5 years if we look at the current market conditions. But the best way of doing that, to me, as a delegate, and that's my plan, and I've got a lot of you know, tactics that we're discussing as a team since my arrival a month and a half ago, is to put people with people. So to put more Quebec firms with more US firms, and have these kinds of meetings where they can find ways to sell to one another, to collaborate, to become strategic partners, I think is the best way of doing this. So you'll see me going around many states and bringing companies with us and creating those kinds of opportunities. The domestic priorities of Premier Legault, you may have heard, but is definitely the economy, as I said, but also education. From a very young age, the priority is to be able to you know, open all the potential for young kids throughout their education years, so that they contribute to this economy and the prosperity. This is a big mandate for change that Premier Legault got. Definitely overwhelming victory. You know, victory over some 40, 50 years of liberal and sovereigntist, we can say, governments in Quebec. I think there's a clear message that was heard, and I hope by you too, that you know, a lot of that you know, opposition between the federal and the provincial government, and you know, these kinds of preoccupations are behind us, and the time is really to focus on the economy. So that is, I think, a very good news for Quebec and for its relationship with your region. Quebec companies' household names in the North Country are very impressive. I just met with friends from Bombardier, from Novabus, Cascade is here, CGI. You all employ thousands of people in New York State and in the North Country. 700,000 jobs depend on the relationship between Canada and New York, and that's a lot of jobs, and they're good jobs as well. Of course, you know, I have to say, when I was discussing with Premier Legault the United States, preparing his first visit, which was in Boston, on the hydroelectricity file, you know, he and I have mixed feelings about Buy America. I know that the region is thriving, and my intention is to make the best out of the situation that is here currently. And I know, as I said in the beginning, I will always find an ally in politicians in this region and in Gary to go to Washington and make sure that, you know, we don't damage our relationship, we don't have unproductive tariffs or quotas, and that we don't have unproductive local content, decisions going forward, or self-inflicted wounds, really, because it hurts both sides of the border. In that regard, I think that, again, we need to make the best out of the situation, and I can guarantee my support for that going forward in every aspect of your daily work in the plants here in Plattsburgh, but also when it's time to go to Washington. We really are at the heart of important exchange. It is the lifeblood of the region, and the government of François Legault is committed to keeping this relationship very healthy. I touched a little bit on Section 232 of the USMCA. Recently, Canadian Minister Freeland was in discussion with Lighthizer, and at the end of the day, I don't think anything has changed. It's the status quo. It's not good news. It's hurting both sides of the border. And at the delegation, we will continue to make representation so that this issue that is hurting us is not forgotten, and that the position of Quebec is clear, which is that we're not interested into ratifying as long as there's tariffs, and we are not interested in quotas either. A word on energy, because Premier Legault's priority being the economy, one of the most productive sectors in Quebec in terms of revenues is hydroelectricity, where we export more than 75% with Hydro-Quebec to the US. And it's not just a question of revenues, but it's also not only a clean, reliable source of energy, but it's also helping New York State decarbonize and meet its goals. Governor Cuomo's goals of 70% renewable in 2030 is very bold and ambitious, and it should be. It should be, because this is an issue we need to address. And so we clearly strongly position Quebec as the battery of the North. There are some progress to sell more hydroelectricity to Massachusetts, where price of energy is the highest in the country. And so that's unfolding with a line that's going to go through Maine. Governor Mills has been very positive on the project. But we can do more with New York State as well. Solar and wind power, of course, must remain in the energy mix and create a lot of jobs also, and is an industry that will be thriving in New York State. But we think that, we've been selling electricity to New York State for a very long time. And we think that, it's not just about keeping the lights on, it's about making a change for the future in terms of our environment. And I will personally continue with some key allies that I've already spoken to, who work with and closely with Governor Cuomo to make sure that we achieve our goals together on decarbonization. This is also an asset for Quebec when speaking to companies, because we can help them with their decarbonization plan. When they come to establish in Quebec, it's less expensive in terms of energy, but it's also clean energy that comes into the balance of what they're trying to do as companies. So to come back to Quebec and North Country, I think I don't have to tell you the assets that we have in Quebec. They're well known by everyone, and there's a lot of Quebecers in the room. But we also have access to 1.4 billion consumers through the recently adopted free trade agreement with Europe, the renewed agreement with the United States, which, aside from the tariffs, is a good deal, is a good agreement on many, many levels, and also the TPP. So we're well positioned to have sustainable growth. And if we grow on our side of the border, you grow on your side of the border, and I love the sign you put there. This is clear. This is what's happening. Premier Legault would love that sign, because there's numbers and it's going up. So I see there's no third line, so it's a good sign. In Quebec, in fact, it always, when you have a little bit of objectivity on things, it's hard when there's labor shortage. It's very hard. the companies want to thrive, they want to go ahead with their plans, and there's shortage. But it's also, in a way, a good news. I mean, we've seen other parts of our history where people were looking for work, and that's another kind of story. So I think we can overcome that, and the government has reinvested in the budget to address the labor shortage. And one of the ways to do that is to collaborate more closely on the education side, research and innovation. So I see people in this room who work in that field, and I think that we need to continue to work together, and I'll be at SUNY later today, and that's extremely important as well, that we continue this collaboration. Of course, keeping our border open and fluid is also a priority of the Quebec government, and I will be your ally on that as well going further. In terms of my plan as delegate, well, one of the things I want to do is work with my friend at the Federation of Chambres de Commerce du Québec, Stéphane Forgette, who already has done something wonderful here in the region with an MOU with trade corridors and a lot of activities between the Board of Trade on this side and on our side. And I think in every state that I'm responsible for, New York, Mid-Atlantic, Kentucky, DC, we need to do more of that. And as I was saying in the beginning, the more we put businesses together from Quebec and the US, I think the more things will happen. So we want to do more with the FCCQ, also in regions that are not so close to us. For example, if I take Virginia State, where CGI of Quebec has its head office. For the United States, there's Virginia Tech, there's a lot of government contracts, there's a lot of things to do, but we don't naturally necessarily go there. We want to match the ecosystem with large contracts as well. When a firm from Quebec, a large firm from Quebec gets a contract, we have an army of smaller firms that can benefit from those contracts. And I think we've been doing that well at the Quebec office. It's a model that works. We recently met with the heads of MTA for bus, rail, and procurement, the same thing on the New Jersey side. And we had the tremendous opportunity to have our firms pitch for different transport equipment parts. And so that's something I want to insist on during my, in my role as Delegate General. We have a lot of to offer in energy, in infrastructure and construction as well, fashion, consumer goods, AI and technology. Joshua Bengio, the head of MILA, the AI and Artificial Intelligence Center in Montreal that's attracting a lot of attention from the world, won the Nobel Prize of Artificial Intelligence yesterday. So we're extremely proud of that. I come from Montreal. I'm born in Montreal Nord, and MILA grew in the backyard of my city, and I didn't even notice it. And now there's thousands of researchers and PhDs that have chosen Montreal around Mr. Bengio to come and thrive, and so that's a big selling point for us right now, for companies that have been in Quebec for a long time and to whom we say, are you interested in developing and putting a couple researchers in our ecosystem of AI? And they all say yes, because we got the best. And so the message is here for you as well. I know all the firms are looking to take advantage of AI and predictability, and this is going to change the way we do business. So, we can organize tours for you in Quebec to discover the industry, the researchers, and the universities that are involved in this sector. We are also very active in biofoods and life sciences, and I know these are sectors that are thriving and beginning to thrive here in the region, so we certainly are interested in doing more. In terms of innovation, we've injected a lot of funding at the Canadian government level, Quebec. Also, La Caisse de Dépôt just launched a $250 million AI fund. That's a lot of money for Quebec companies. So really, there's something happening in that regard. I guess to conclude, because I'd like to take questions, I think, after. The message that I carry from Premier Legault, and the message I want to carry in all the states I represent and the territory that is under my responsibility, is that we're open for business more than ever. More than ever, we have a very pragmatic government, very pragmatic, that wants to inject a shot of adrenaline in the Quebec economy for the next 4 years. There's no bad deal. We'll be at the table if you want to discuss, growing your business together on both sides of the border. We have many champions in Quebec that we will reach out to so that they can open up their client base to become a little bit ambassadors for us on the U.S. territory, because I really think we can do more. That's why I followed into this job. That's why Premier Legault and I hit it off, because I think we can do a lot more with our U.S. partners, and that begins with this region. We need to federate also more Quebecers on this side of the borders. U.S. citizens who have studied at McGill and other universities, Concordia, Université de Montréal, UQAM, my alma mater. We need to find them where they are. They're CEOs of firms and they're vice presidents in firms, or they're on the shop floor, and they can really help us do more together as closely as possible. So in closing, let me say that I'm dedicated at finding more opportunities for our region. I look forward to working with you to expand our already very important partnership, and there's no reason for us not to do better under that particular government, for which the economy is number one. And I hope to come back often here in the region, hopefully for good news, but also to accompany our elected representatives on our side of the borders. And again, Gary, thank you so much.
Thank you.